reported to SEAL Team 1 after completing basic underwater demolition SEAL training, BUDS. There was no leadership course. New SEALs were issued no books or materials of any kind on the subject. We were expected to learn to lead the way SEALs had learned for our entire existence, through OJT or on-the-job training. Of course, there are some advantages to OJT. It is helpful to be coached and mentored by a solid leader who trains you as you go through the real challenges of your actual job. In the SEAL teams, that means a leader telling you exactly what to do in various scenarios as you go through them. If your leader happens to be a good leader, is willing to invest in you, and if you are smart enough to pay attention, you will eventually learn something about leadership. But there are some major shortfalls to this method of leadership. First of all, not all leaders are good leaders, and the SEAL teams are no exception. When I got to the SEAL teams, it was 1991. There is no guarantee that the leader in a platoon was supposed to be mentoring young SEALs. Was the type who was supposed to be mentoring young SEALs was the type of leader who should be emulated. On top of that, not all leaders are looking to mentor their subordinates. Furthermore, even the best leaders can only truly invest their time and knowledge in a handful of their people. Even during peacetime, there is a ton of administrative work to be done, and there is a good chance that leadership coaching and mentorship will slide off the schedule. Moving on a little bit. I was lucky. I had some truly great leaders who invested in me. They took the time to explain things to me. They talked me through strategies and tactics. Some of the Vietnam SEALs told stories that held important tactical leadership lessons. I listened. Those stories and lessons sank in. Eventually, I was able to put the leadership stories I had learned to the ultimate test in combat. I then codified those lessons and passed them on to young SEALs entering the ranks. I tried to teach them how to lead. The goal of leadership seems simple: to get people to do what they need to do to support the mission and the team. But the practice of leadership is different for everyone. There are nuances to leadership that everyone has to discover for themselves. Leaders are different. Followers are different. Peers are different. Everyone has their own individual characteristics, personalities, and perspectives. I often tell leaders that what makes leadership so hard is dealing with people, and people are crazy. The craziest person a leader has to deal with is themselves. That being said, even crazy has a pattern. There are patterns to human behavior. If you can recognize the patterns, you can predict the way things are likely to unfold and influence them. That's the point. Who am I trying to teach? Who am I to try to teach leaders how to lead? Where did I learn leadership? Much of my leadership education was luck. I say it was luck because there were a few fortunate coincidences that gave me the right frame of mind, the right teachers, and the right opportunities to learn. One of the ways I was lucky and that made me focus on leadership was the fact that I wasn't really that naturally talented at anything in particular. As a little kid, I wasn't the fastest or the strongest or the smartest. I was never great at shooting a basketball, kicking a soccer ball, or throwing a baseball. I didn't win any races or have a shelf of trophies and ribbons from sports. My report card was never exceptional either. I might have done well in a class if I was interested, but I usually wasn't, and my grades reflected that. I was average across the board. Still, at the core of my personality, I wanted to do well. I wanted to leave an impression on people. I wanted to leave a mark, but my athletic and cognitive skills didn't always allow it. So even from a young age, I needed to get others with more talent, and more skill to do what I needed them to do. Of course, I didn't think of it as leadership. I just thought of making things happen and contributing by getting people to work together to support one another as we move toward a common mission. Moving on a little more. That one, not that one. Nope. Okay, talking about buds. Here we go. The Master Chief of the Command the highest enlisted ranking. The highest ranking enlisted SEAL at Team 1 welcomed us aboard. No one here cares that you made it through buds. We all did. It doesn't mean anything here. You have to prove yourselves to earn your trident. So keep your mouth shut, your ears open, don't forget anything, and be on time. Any questions? The trident was the gold insignia worn on the uniform, which indicates you are a SEAL. To receive our tridents, we had to go through a 6-month probationary period and then go through a written and oral review board with the senior enlisted personnel at the team. We were all nervous about that, and the Master Chief provided no comfort whatsoever. None of us had any questions for the Master Chief. That was a humbling moment. Despite having been through BUDS training and despite being told that the training was elite and special, we realized very quickly that we weren't. The rest of the new guys and I still had a lot to prove, and somehow I knew I always would. This was one of the underlying things of SEAL Team's cultures. You can never rest on what you have achieved in the past. You always have to improve. And that is my little intro for today's episode 122. Welcome to Moving with Life. Thanks for joining. So there's just a few key parts of that I wanted to start with. Usually I know I start with Moving with Life and I kind of say, hey, we're going to jump into this. I wanted to change that for this episode just because it could give us some structure to what we'll be talking about today. I've been talking about I had to use Marcus Aurelius for a while. I thought about jumping to Jordan B. Peterson, but because we did the 42 rules, we're going to actually eventually, not yet, we're going to eventually dive back into a few specific rules because his new book's out, 12 More Rules for Life, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. So we will eventually actually make our way back to a couple of rules. But as I was, I could have maybe done more Marcus Aurelius. I'm like, well, we did that for a week. We did 2 episodes. Those last 2 episodes, where it was book 2 and book 3. I was like, okay, we can move on, and then eventually we'll make our way back. One thing to stay on course, I guess, because like Jocko, whenever he does book reviews and he's actually the only person that I know like does like thorough book reviews, because he'll do a 3-hour podcast on one book, and I don't mind listening to that. I don't mind, especially, there's been several books that he's done from the very beginning to current, and now he's been having a lot more guests, which is really cool. But he'll always kind of revert back to new set of, like, there's just different what are they? I don't even know what they're called. I can't think of it right now. But he'll have like Dave Burke, which is another actually a pilot, military pilot, retired military pilot, that Dave Burke, and they'll go over like certain basically manuals, feel like manuals that actually come out from the Marine Corps, and they'll discuss that. And then he has obviously various book reviews, and so. But for me, it doesn't work because I always feel like there's so many, and he says it, he's like, I can't go through everything in this book. You need to go buy it for yourself. You need to go so you can read it and get all the details. And like I said, I don't mind doing that. But whenever I'm here and trying to organize my thoughts for whenever I'm here, it's like, man, that's important. Well, that's important. That's important too. That's why, like, even right now, like as I was going through, it's like, I remember in my mind, I had it all lined up, but it's like, oh yeah, not that. Oh yeah, yes. So anyways, that's been my approach to these past few weeks. After the 42 Rules of Life, we did the his brother Kamal Ravikant's book. And then we did 2 weeks. We did a week of Marcus Aurelius, and now we're gonna jump into some leadership strategy and tactics. The back says, learn to build trust, learn to be decisive, learn to take command, learn to control your emotions, learn to deliver the truth, learn balance, learn the strategies and tactics, learn to lead. And so I did that first part that I read was the actual introduction of the book, and there were, as I was reading through, and I'm like, okay, what's the most important at the like right now? Like what am I experiencing in my work? What am I experiencing when I'm talking with friends and family back home? Family just friends in general, like out, not just back home, but just in general. What's going on with my coworkers? What are my coworkers' points of view currently on the climate, whatever's going on at work, or um, maybe they're going to school too and they're doing other things. And it's like, okay, what are you learning, but how do you feel about it? What's going on? How are your professors? Stuff like things like that. Uh, and as I was looking through my bookshelf that I have here, and I'm like, cause I thought about going into some Jordan Peterson, and I was like, we just did 42 rules, and we're gonna dive deeper into those 42 rules. And it's not gonna be all of them. It's just like I said, it's just gonna be like 2 or 3. I gotta figure out which ones are most relevant for me at the moment. But I saw this book, and I had actually started reading this book a year ago when it came out. Because I think it came out. Let's see, we're 2021 March, so maybe February 2020. I'm not gonna look it up right now, but I know I started reading it because I'm not done bookmarking it. Because I didn't finish it, because then once I finished my what I had to do where I was on the East Coast, I then came back. Now I'm on the West Coast, and it's like, okay, what? So then I put it down. Started doing work, and then obviously COVID started, so like busy with that. And then obviously there's been other books, and obviously going through books here, it's like, okay, I am now in 2021 on a good little schedule where it's like, okay, I can start keep relating whatever I'm going through with books that I've read or I'm reading. In this case, books that I hadn't finished yet. But I've gone through enough where it's like, oh, I can definitely read about that and talk about it today. So yeah, so sorry for this long like introduction, but it's like there's a lot going on, but there's not a lot going on, and it's weird because for me with this time change, I keep just for me with this time change, it's like in the mornings I feel like, okay, I have like a good amount of time, and then by the time you know it, the day's over, and then it is nighttime, and it's like, okay, it's time to go to sleep. Trying to stay on a schedule, at least for now, because my schedule's gonna change pretty soon. But it's like, okay, cool. Let's keep going. And so yeah. So leadership strategy and tactics by Jocko Willink. This is actually Field Manual 2. The first one is just Field Manual, and it gives like very broken down. I've actually read. Oh, this is a while back. I don't have it with me either. It's at home. But that one I like, and I'll probably eventually get back into that one as well. But this is the second Field Manual. This one dives deeper and gives more stories on the leadership strategy and tactics, stuff that he's learned while he was in the military. And then I actually don't know where it goes, because again, I haven't read all the way through it. I've only gone a certain section done, but we can start going through it now. Part 1, leadership strategies. First platoon, detach. It was my first platoon that I learned the power of being able to detach myself from the chaos and mayhem going on, take a step back and see what was actually happening. I was lucky that it happened the way it did. We were training to assault offshore oil platforms. In the Persian Gulf, oil platforms could be taken over by enemy forces for a variety of reasons, and we need to be able to take them back. SEALs had participated in operations against Iranian-controlled oil rigs in the region in the 1980s, and the thought was that we might have to do it again. So we trained and prepared to execute that very specific mission. We would spend time and do training exercises and mock operations on commercial oil platforms in various locations. It was great training, mainly because oil platforms are incredibly complex and dangerous structures. Many parts of an oil platform are highly flammable and under massive pressure, so we had to learn what to be cautious of in the event we ever did a real mission on an oil platform. During a real mission with live ammunition and explosive charges used to open doors, we would obviously need to make sure we understood the danger involved. And then he goes on to talk about how creating a strategy for the target is complex, but the structure itself is obviously more complex because again, you have like stairwells and different things. As a new guy, I was doing my best, trying to make the right moves at the right time, listening to tactical calls being made by the leadership, and trying to support those calls. At this point in our pre-deployment workup cycle, the platoon had already been through a lot together. We had completed a full cycle of land warfare training, done extensive close quarters combat training, and executed urban training. Okay, so they had done a lot of training, obviously. I'm trying to get to the part where they talk about their leader. So let's see. So while I was a new guy, most of the other new guys and I had begun to understand the tactics we were being taught. As for me, my individual skills were nothing special. I was not the best shot, not the fastest at reloading my weapon, and definitely not setting any records on the combat swimmer training dives we conducted. But I did feel really good about the tactics we were shown, how they worked, and how they were applied. I paid close attention to my platoon leadership, watched them make their tactical decisions, and tried to understand why they made the choices they made. But I was still a new guy. It certainly wasn't my place to make tactical calls or tell people what to do. Then, during one clearance of the oil rig, something happened that hadn't happened before. As we were moving through the structure, the whole platoon entered an area of the rig and became overwhelmed with what was in front of them. It was a large level platform covered with mechanical gear and equipment, which created numerous hiding areas for enemy personnel and presented a complex tactical problem. The whole platoon stood there side by side, looking down the sights of our weapons at the potential enemy threats, like an old-fashioned skirmish line. I stood there like the rest of the platoon, scanning for targets and trying to identify dangerous, high-pressure, or flammable areas while I waited for a call to be made directing us on our next move. I waited a little longer, still scanning, thinking someone needed to make a call so we would know what to do next. I waited even longer, still nothing. Out of my peripheral vision, I saw the guys to my left and to my right all doing the same thing. I was holding their weapon in a red position, scanning for targets and waiting for the call. But the call still didn't come. I waited a little longer until finally I had had enough. I elevated my weapon into the high port position, meaning I pointed it in a safe direction toward the sky and away from threats. Then I took a half step back off the firing line and looked to my left and to my right. It was plain to see every person in the platoon, including the platoon commander, the platoon chief, and the assistant platoon commander, and the leading petty officer, was pointing his weapon toward the threat, scanning for targets, but no one was looking anywhere else. They could only see the field of view down the sights of their weapon. No one had any situational awareness of anything else going on. Yet, even as a lowly new guy, I could see the whole situation with complete clarity. When I was on the line looking down my gun, I was only seeing what was directly in my field of fire. Now that I had stepped back and looked around, I could see the entire deck, all its obstacles, and the simplest way to clear it. By stepping back, I detached myself mentally and physically from the immediate problem. And now it was easy for me to see the solution. Clearer than even the more experienced SEALs in my platoon, I took a deep breath and paused for another second to confirm no one else was going to move or look around or make a call. No one was moving. The platoon was frozen. I had to do something. Hold left, move right, I barked in the authoritative voice, in as authoritative a voice as I could muster. Even as I said that, I half expected someone to look over, see it was me, a new guy trying to make a call, and tell me to shut my mouth. Instead, each member of the platoon did what we were always trained to do when we hear a verbal command. They passed the word, hold left, move right, hold left, move right. The word repeated down the line. As the word was passed, it simultaneously turned into action. The guys on the left side of the deck held their position, scanning for targets, covering the threats, as the new guys on the right began to push through and clear the area from the right flank. This was not a complex tactical call. It was a standard cover and move procedure that we had practiced and rehearsed countless times, and as soon as the guys heard it, they did it. As they executed the movement, I realized something very important. I realized that by high-porting my weapon, stepping back off the firing line and looking around, by detaching physically, even only by a few inches, and more important, detaching mentally from the problem at hand, I was able to see infinitely more than anyone else in my platoon. And since I was able to see everything, I was able to make a good decision, which allowed me, a new guy, the most junior guy in the platoon, to lead. The cellar deck was soon cleared, and we continued to move through the rig, clearing the remaining. No one complained or objected my decision once we'd completed the run. One of the more senior guys actually told me I had made a good call. My platoon's reaction reinforced this idea of detaching, and I began to do it as often as I could. It wasn't easy. Sometimes I would still get caught up focusing on things immediately in front of me, but at a minimum, I became aware of it. Then I made it my goal to never be completely caught up in the minuscule tactical aspects of a problem. My goal was to get to a higher mental and physical altitude to see more. Just as it had worked in the oil rig, detachment worked in land warfare and several in their different training areas. It worked in every simulated combat environment we were put in. The more often I detached, the easier it became to see and understand the tactical picture and I got it. So yeah, detachment. And I'm gonna finish up here because I'm almost done with this part of the book. And this is only one. This is literally his first platoon and one part, which is just detachment from. And in this case, this gives you a very distinguished picture. It's not a clear picture because you can imagine an oil rig and having a bunch of people there and more people because you have people then observing the team that are going through this exercise. But we don't, and the reason why I was okay with jumping into this because if you think about Marcus Aurelius and talking about emotion and detaching yourself emotionally because your emotions get in your way of rational and justified thought. And here again, this is a very scenario based. This is a very specific scenario where it's like, oh, we're on this thing and we're gonna go get this building or this the oil rig structure, and we're gonna take it back from the bad guys, right? Versus if you think about it, if you're in a situation at work and your boss tells you, or even a coworker tells you, hey, go type me, I don't know, go type out this order for me, I need it today. And let's say your job is to type out orders, and for whatever reason, you get upset, and now your emotions are right, or maybe no, that's a terrible example actually. I'm trying to make sure this makes sense because I was trying to get to the point of having to detach emotionally so you can get the job done. Maybe you type your orders one way and this person types orders the other way, and now you're forced to work together on this project. You have two different points of view. You're working on this project, and then you think your way is right, and the other person thinks their way is right, and then you start losing the goal. You start forgetting what the end goal is. You start saying, no, my part is right. You don't know what you're talking about, or we've always we've always done it this way, so that's the way it should be. Terrible. I mean, obviously this is my opinion. Terrible example. Terrible way of justifying why we should do things your way. Because you said so. I very much dislike that. It's like, oh, because we always did it like this. Well, things change all the time. So why not attempt it? And if you've never tried it before, then why even arguing against what could be? I'm not saying just for me. I'm saying if you're in this, I think it can be relevant to anybody. I'm just trying to detach it from this military aspect to a business aspect, and then because business is anything, wherever you're working, wherever you can be working at a convenience store, you could be working at a bank, you could be working on your blog, you could be working on merchant. If you just create merchandise and you sell it, and you have, so you're creating orders. This order example that I was trying to create. You detach yourself because in his case, it's like you're detaching yourself so you can move forward in this thing to take over the building. And in a business world, or I guess a business scenario, it's not always so clear But when your emotions rise and it's keeping you from getting the job done, maybe there's some compromise. Maybe, hey, that's actually a good idea. Let's try it your way, and then if it doesn't work, let's try it my way. Or or can we do both? Like, hey, I'm not mad. I'm actually legit not mad. I'm just trying to find the best way to go about accomplishing setting out this order. I don't. Uh, I don't. I'm not looking to be in the way. I'm not looking to keep us from doing this much. What? Because the faster we do this, then we're done with the project. Usually that and then you go on to the next project or whatever. But I'm just trying to give you, the listener and viewer, just some perspective on detaching. Because again, this is a very specific scenario, and I'm going to finish up here. I'm almost done, but I wanted to, because that's a lot to read. It was a lot to go through and kind of digest. Because again, this is a very specific situation versus because you might think, oh, well, that's the military. They do think that would never work. So that's been like kind of the argument for like extreme ownership and like some of these other things. When you start hearing management and people, which is me included, society, because people say society, people say people, or others say people. It's like, well, we are the people. We do make up society. We do make up these businesses and these jobs, right? So when you get so emotional, and we could even go into I'm not going to go into politics, but you could think about politics. You get emotional rise because their idea is not the right idea. It's like, man, you're potentially just mad because they don't have the same overall political view as you. That's another thing being detached, which is for me, I have a very physical detachment. It's like I don't watch the news. People are like, oh, have you heard about this? Like, no, but you can. I don't mind having a conversation about it. Like, oh, what happened? What did you hear? What did you see? And then we have a conversation, and then you talk about it, and then I don't really bring up my opinions as far as that goes, and I try not to even hear and in certain social interactions. But I'm always down for a conversation, and I've said that before, where it's like, yeah. So my physical detachment is literally not watching the news, not being completely into. Now, obviously, some if major things happen, it comes up in conversation, and that's where it comes up in conversation. Oh, did you hear about this? Okay, yeah, I didn't know about that. And then I read financial news. I try to read financial news pretty much daily. So, then that's the news I get. But as far as being detached emotionally from like politics and like certain things, like I literally don't. I detach myself by not interacting with that type of information. Period. Because I have things to do. I have things I want to accomplish, and yeah. And then and the people that I talk to on a daily basis, like that's what my world revolves around. Is just a few things, and it doesn't include always daily news from our major news outlets. So let me close up here. This is going to be closing out the podcast. So let me jump back in. Detachment is one of the most powerful tools a leader can have. The question is, pragmatically, how do you use it? Step 1 is to be aware. Pay attention to yourself and what is happening around you. Make it a goal to avoid being fully absorbed in the minute details. I'd say minute details of any situation. Don't let it happen. If you are staying aware, checking yourself, you will be likelier to avoid getting tunnel vision. Listen to indicators like your breath, your voice. Are you breathing hard? Are you raising your voice? Be aware of your body. Are you clenching your teeth, squeezing your fists? All these reactions are signs of getting emotional about the situation. When that happens, or when a situation is becoming chaotic, step back. Physically take a step back. Lift your chin up, which elevates your vision and compels you to look around. Once you are physically detached from the situation, this cues you to do the same thing mentally. Take a deep breath and exhale. Look methodically from the left to the right and back again. This is another cue from your body to your mind to relax. Look around, absorb what you are seeing, let go of your emotions, and make a dispassionate and accurate assessment of the situation so you can make a good decision. When you begin to follow the steps detach, you will see it is one of the most powerful tools a leader can have. Of course, there is a dichotomy to detachment that must be balanced. You can take it too far. You can become so detached that you lose the connection of what is happening. This is unusual, but if it does happen, if you begin to lose touch with your scenario, don't fret. Just take a step back in, get a little closer to the problem and engage. And that's where I'm going to end this episode in this book. But that was a great closing to the section, which that's what you kind of do at the end of a chapter when you're writing a book. It's like you have your closing passage or whatever, or your closing passage and thoughts that will then lead you into the next chapter. So yeah, he says, detach emotionally, because in this case of military, where it is life and death, and there's been things that are have been happening, and it's public stuff, so it's like I could talk about it, but I won't do it today. But in scenarios like that where it is life and death, because your training will then you'll emulate your training when you're in a life scenario. But again, just to be able to, for the viewer that aren't on the military or don't have that background, but you're in a business. Again, you're in a business. You work. Maybe you work for a lawyer. Maybe you work for you work at a bank. You're a musician, and you start veering away from the goal. This is something that it took me a little while to learn. It's not like I've said this before, but I had to say it again because I don't want it to seem. I just don't want it to seem like I just know it without having experienced the other side where I wasn't detached, or and having certain. And I have to find a way to bring in some. There's some other stories I can think about as far as leadership goes, but I just feel like we're in a good role right here, going from Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism to then this beginning chapter of detachment. It's like, okay, this is a good trend. This is a good transition to getting back into like a leadership perspective. But just because you're not a manager doesn't mean you're not a leader. And so I wanted to make sure that we covered that, because I feel like it's relevant, and especially if you feel like, I don't want to say you don't have a purpose, but if you feel like, I've never been good, I've never been the best at X, Y, or Z, but you've had this ability to still work with people and maybe help them, and when you help somebody, it's like, yes, you're doing it because it's genuine, you want them to be better, but I think we don't realize that is a type of leadership, and he talks about it, having the right leaders, and sometimes you don't know, in the intro, you don't always have that. So OJT, on the job training, I think is the best, because I love trial and error, but there are just moments and there's things where it's like, yeah, that's probably not the best time to go through trial and error. That's just we need to actually get some theory and maybe some training done with where there's nothing at stake, and then we can use it in the real world, on the job, and then you start developing, but you start moving things. You start moving things around. You start moving little things around. Oh, that was a lot of. I feel like it was a lot of information. I hope that we got to a good closing point. I feel like I could go on, but we will have to say that for next episode. So make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you take care of your teams, others, your household, mentally and physically. It seems like things are getting better. More people are getting the vaccine. I'm seeing it myself. More people are getting the vaccine, which is good. Things are starting to open up, which I think is also good. Be mindful. I'm not saying be too careful. Just be mindful of your surroundings. Be mindful what the heck's going on, because it's COVID's still a thing, but it's getting better, and that's good. 2021 is looking bright. I will remain optimistic about where we are in the world, and because we're pretty lucky to be able to do this. You're listening. You're gonna go about your day, and hopefully maybe you can use some of this detachment. Maybe you can pass it on to somebody else or maybe you can use it. You have a scenario. You're in a scenario at work where it's like, I should probably detach, and like, hey, let's aim towards the common goal. So with that, I will leave you to hopefully aim for the common goal. If you want to support the podcast, everything's in the show notes. If you want to message me, email me, Everything's in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support, even if you're just tuning in, actually listening, and hopefully bringing these things are helping us just advance and get a little better every day. So until next time, we'll see y'all very, very soon.